Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just making a video. Again, it's off the cuff, so just going off my memory and nothing written, scripted. So I wanted to make a video about an important subject, but I'll start by saying that there was a person in my life, or is a person in my life, who asks questions. She asks questions, and she always wants a one sentence answer, essentially. Which is good for her because she can regurgitate that sentence, say in a board meeting or in a meeting at her work, or maybe she's around a group of friends, and so she can just ask me, what does this word actually mean, and then I can go, okay, da 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 da, and she goes, okay, cool, that's it, and then she can go and sort of not feel silly or whatever, or maybe it's an important that's a topic that she needs to give an answer to, say a senior manager or something, and so she can just sort of thing, or maybe they're having a heated discussion on what's going on in politics and at the workplace, and so she just will ask me like an example of a question would be like, who started feminism? Then I can give a one sentence answer. I can just say, okay, after World War II, the Rockefellers financed feminism because they realized that, they had the same tax base, because all the men went to war and the women went into the workforce. And they realized that the tax base will remain the same when the men return from war. So, so they made a elaborate plan to make sure that the tax base doubles. Hence, that's what it was. So it's a pretty easy answer. Well, you can give it in a couple of sentences, but I sort of lengthen it a bit to give the audience here context. However, there was one question, a very good question, she asked me, and that was, what's the difference between left and right? Like in the political context, what's the difference between left and right? And I realized I couldn't give a one sentence answer. It was, I was sort of didn't have an answer. And taking into consideration that at that time I was living in a country where I couldn't vote because I wasn't a citizen. So, you know, and this question was asked back in 2012 approximately, so when I was asked this question. And so, because I didn't have a answer as required by the person, and literally I realized that I didn't have an answer, and so I began studying it. So I looked at all the political spectrum, communism, Marxism, all the different theologies of politics, So, uh, you know, theory, all the, like, sorry, I paused there, blanked out for a second there. Yeah, the like communism, Marxism, socialism, and all these things, all the way to meritocracy, and and then you have to go into the history because you have to go in right at the beginning when nation states and things were formed, and or how systems started right from the beginning of time, like right from tribes to groups of human beings existing, and so it was a big, big, big subject, and it required a lot of research till some about I'd say about 4 years ago when I actually could give a one sentence answer, which I still find humorous. So, like looking at the history of it, so so you go, so once you learn about all things like communism, and of the history of communism in China, and you Soviet Union, and other countries, you know, them two being the major populated bases of communism. And then you got you obviously got like Fidel Castro's and Che Guevara's and all these people in history, and then you look at how, so when I'm getting definitions for all these political sort of groupings and leanings, what they stand for, what the basic ideology is, and how much sense it makes to me or not, that doesn't matter. It's just what it stands for. So when I did all that, then say if you say you ask a person and they say, "Ah, I'm basically a socialist," But when I remember when I was all my life, I was fed by the media. This is a good example that Hitler's fascist and a bloody right winger, far right. That's what they called it. So then I look at like say socialism and I go, okay, ask a person, they say I'm a socialist. So I go, okay. Oh, but that same person, what do you think about Hitler? Oh, he was a evil right winger. So, but then you go, but literally, the name of his party is National Socialist Party. So, I mean, that means, are you kind of hating yourself? Or, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. No, 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 that's different, that's different. Okay, right, fine, I get it. Now, if you look at, again, in the Hitler context, the Soviet Union was communist, and and Germany under Hitler was socialist, right? So the essentially socialism and communism, from when I've studied, is like a couple in the same bed who hate each other. To me, that's how socialism and communism is, because Hitler was looking over the wall at communism, the Bolsheviks, and he was looking at. I'm not going to go into the trigger words here because I know I don't know if YouTube will ban me or something, but a particular group of people started settling in Russia, and that time it was under, you know, monarchy, right? You had the Tsars, the Russian Tsars, and they, so they realized what was happening with all the migrants into Russia, and they were given a big tract of land, like by the royalty. They said, you're happy to live here, and everything. But when there were unfair trading practices between their sort of giant piece of land and the people they were trading with, they were not sort of following Russian morality at the time, and the Tsars stepped in and they said, look, you're happy to live here, but there's two conditions for your settlement. One is that you follow the fair trading practices, within the Russian moral law, moral code. And number two is you can't become political. So that was the conditions. And they agreed to it. But then they formed a party. They formed a communist party, and communism, like I said, is socialism, because essentially they promised the same thing, free stuff, like, socialism probably a little bit less free stuff. Communism is like free stuff, So that's it. So that's that's the difference. So if you think about a place like Russia at the time, and the most essential thing for people are heating, shelter, and food, which, it sounds very basic, but Russia is a cold country. Your energy needed, whether it's coal or wood or whatever, to light your fires, and then shelter so that you don't freeze outside, obviously. And the third thing is, a supply of food. So if some political party says, look, you will have free bread and free eggs, right? Like a loaf of bread every day and 2 eggs per person, say. And each person will get a kilo of energy for the week, coal or something like that. And, so if there's a household of 5 people, say 5 kilos a week. I'm just making these figures up, obviously. So then the general public loves that idea, because the general public goes, okay, I am working. I'm, say, a lumberjack. So I'm cutting wood and I get paid for it. And I bring it home, and half my pay will go into those 3 items. Half my pay will go into, say, my rent, my housing, second, and food for my family, and heating for my family in the winters. So that's it. And if somebody promises that to you for free, that sounds like a great deal, right? So they went and started following that party, and that party slowly gained power. Even though, like, they had made the agreement not to be in politics, they put frontmen who were not part of the community, and right under the radar of the ruling SARS at the time, and basically they ran the SARS, and they just took over the whole party. So they had, like, by the time they were like 300 and say 90 members of their I mean, like, self-appointed leaders of the party. They So when they had about 390 approximate leaders, they had 95% of them had been replaced by that first ethnic group. So, so that means you can just say five are the front men, and 385 are basically different. They belong to different ethnic group. Fine, but the movement was powerful. The message was resonated with every person, like you can say every living, because Russia is mostly agricultural and peasant community, small villages spread out in the community. So it would resonate to the majority of the population, except maybe, more the people who are like in the, the wealthier community, maybe, that kind of thing. Maybe it won't gravitate toward them, because, if they are employing people and all that, that's an investment for them. So that's it. They took over, and Hitler's looking over the fence into Russia and watching all this. And then they basically just drained the country. That was when they killed, like, around some estimates, about 18 million people. Right? They just went to every farm, took all the produce, even took the animals, even took the tools, so the farmer can't even farm. And if anybody tried to stop them, they would massacre them. They would kill them. Like, we're taking your donkey, we're taking your horse, we're taking your tools, we're taking all the grain on your thing. And then the farmer goes, I'll starve. Well, that's what you signed up for. It's going to be redistributed to the people, basically. And once they had done that and they'd sold all the resources, the people who got wealthy off this, saying that, we are for the people, they took their heavy suitcases of gold and started migrating out of Russia. And Hitler was afraid of that. So, like, that's why I said they're like a couple who hate each other. Because essentially Hitler was a socialist, so he was doing a different version of that in Germany. It was just the German version was, I'm Hitler, like, I'm a great manager, and I will manage to make every Russian citizen a wealthier person, from, how they were looted and how they were completely robbed in World War One, and left poverty-stricken by the winning allies of that time, World War One allies. They absolutely drained Germany, and you can go back. That's what the fascination about the history is, like, how did all this happen? How did even World War happen? And you realize that there was a world war before World War One. That's why I'll say that last one, the 1940s. 30s and 40s was actually World War III as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't World War II, even, by all definition. Because I reckon in my opinion, the First World War was the war over the seas between all the major naval powers of the time. Then it would be like, the Portuguese, the French, the British, eventually the British being the masters of the seas, essentially making them masters of the world. At the time, big British Empire, where the sun never sets. It came out from the power of the sea. People don't realize that. And unfortunately, Germany was never a power of the sea country. See, that's the thing. And But they got all the raw material from the seagoing countries, and then they produced like, so they, if they got iron ore, which the British supplied, and like ripped them off, and they would make steel that they'd sell to Britain, right? So Germany, so then the Germany thought like, why can't we get the iron ore? That's where World War I really kind of started from. So it was that sort of thing. People, that this is my own version of not my own version. This is the way I sort of summarize history in a different way, and so that's it. So World War II, which my World War III, World War II, was when also all this modern politics started after that. So the people who were the baby boomers of the thing, and they became the the lefties of the 1960s and 50s and 60s. They were the left-leaning people. They were, so they were, amongst them, there were all sorts of groups. They were, when they were protesting the Vietnam War, they were very communist and things like that. They were very socialist, very Marxist, all these things. So, if that, then that means, and there was Hollywood, and people forget that Hollywood and Hitler had a very good friendship until, the, when they started killing Jewish people, and then they sort of fractured from that point. But that's another big subject on its own. But that so anyway, so to answer the question of what's the difference between left and right, because I know I'm going off topic, but this all ties into it. I realized that it wasn't what the person sort of defined themselves at, because you can't be, like I said, socialist and socialist communist in the same bed and hating each other. Like, then that doesn't make any sense, because as far as you define yourself, you are left leaning, and left leaning people are essentially they gravitate towards Marxism, socialism, and all that, because essentially then why do they gravitate towards that? Then one big factor came in. Now this is where I'm going into personalities. And when I'm going to personalities, it's because I had to now go, okay, okay, I understand the political thing. I understand all the definitions, but I don't know why a person makes a choice towards which party. Like, what's characteristics of a human being that makes them, when they grow up, they might be, they say they grew up in a family where the family's very political, like they have always voted for one political party. Say they're a Democrat family, and we've always voted for the Democrats in America. And because America is a sort of bipartisan country, which has like two essential, Democrats and Republicans. So it's quite easy to define them as, politically. Like you just go, okay, because they only have two choices. It's like one or two. In other countries, there's a lot of smaller political parties. And they make coalitions and this and that, and sort of they sort of debate and negotiate and to get somebody into power. So that's how. But in America, it's easier defined. So that's why I'm giving them as an example. So what makes a person lean that way? I mean, if you're in a family and all the family are Democrats, then why is one of the siblings, say, a Republican? Then I go, okay, then I have to actually look at families like siblings, and so this is sort of all done in sort of like in incognito, like I was just observing people, like extended family, all sorts of, just notice, anytime I'm in a social gathering, where people are discussing their political views, then I would think about what that person, like if I, especially if I know people for a long time, say I've known somebody for 20 years, or I've known somebody for 30 years, or since childhood, or whatever, and then I know I know pretty much a lot about them, right? I know their education, I know whether they were sort of, doing well in school, whether they're doing well in sports. You know everything about a person that you've known. And then if literally in your lifetime, like, if, person who's 30 to or 40 or whatever, they have like they know people. They know more than they know hundreds of people that they've known for a long time, classmates, all sorts of people they've met throughout their life, friends, all sorts of. So it's quite easy to observe the personalities and then what they identify themselves as politically. So that narrowed down my sort of answer. Now I could go, okay. Then I realized that if you look at siblings, for example, like say a family has, just an example, say 6 children, right? And then you look at all the all the siblings, and now they're in adulthood. They say they're in their 50s or 60s, and you've known this group of adults your whole life. And so you know pretty much everything there is to know about them. You know their traits, how they function in social gatherings. You just know everything about them, and then I started narrowing down. I go, okay, so one big factor was the ones who felt, say, victimized, even in their own families. Like, say, there's a person who's, bitter, like, about something, like, because, they're comparing themselves to their sibling. So they'll say, oh, look, that person got lucky, or my parents favored that child, or this and that, So that was the first trait I found, that they were always self-perpetuating victimhood. That was one big factor in their political choice, right? So that automatically makes you into the sort of go into the category where you are like a socialist or communist, because you want fairness. And, so you want everybody to be treated equally, regardless. And that's what you define as fairness, right? But others outside that might look at that as favoritism or some other definition. So, okay, right. That's one trait, okay, victimhood. The other trait I found, and this is the key one, and it's like I said, it all still brings me humor, is low IQ. Essentially, that was the answer. People who are not too bright, like that doesn't mean that they're not too successful or something. Like, a person can be hardworking and just enough knowledge to do well in, say, in an office environment, to and just live their life through small promotions and all that, and retire, and and they've got a good sense of achievement of themselves, which is fine and great. But essentially in their life, they were never of high intellect. Like, they didn't observe a huge amount of information and data and correlated things over their lifetime, and sort of were interested in everything. See, like, that's another thing. Like, I find that people who are left leaning are not interested in everything. They're only interested in like how people nowadays say echo chamber. They're only interested in what people in anybody, in any grouping, in any setting, that if they're agreed to. So if they are in a social gathering, the only way you can interact with this person is either agree with them or keep your mouth shut. Because when people who are in this, like I'm saying, in this personality type, they cannot have a logical argument, because they just don't have the information to make an argument. So that's one thing. So I started then the other grouping is people who in themselves, right, are successful. They may not be of high intellect, but they are curious. So over their lifetime, they gain wisdom because of their curiosity in general. But even though they might not be of high intellect, then there's people who have high intellect, and they're born curious with a high intellect. So right from the beginning, they're absorbing information. And then when you meet them at any point in their lifetime, and they just, they're really interesting to listen to, because they can just fill you with knowledge, So, and those are a rare group of people. So that's the other end of the spectrum. So essentially, if I split it down the middle, that's it. It's people who are left leaning except for the very few who take advantage of them. So in the left world, 99.9% of people are intellectually low and uninterested in anything. That's and the few amongst them are the ones who are just using them. So like when that 390 I gave from the Bolsheviks, you can take that to the CCP or any of these things, or even socialist governments like in countries like New Zealand and Canada, where it's supposed to be all about the people, but then there's the select few elites, who actually just drain the people. They just suck them until there's nothing left in them. And that's how the left works. On the right are people who basically, because of their very nature, they want independence, they want freedom, because they don't need, or they don't want, they don't fall themselves in the victim category. They just go, if I'm not, say I choose not to do something, or like I choose to have a lot of wealth and a powerful career. They'll do that. Or they say, I choose not to have a lot of wealth, so I'm going to just go live in the forest, but I'm intelligent enough to take care of myself in the forest. I'll actually be a good survivor, and any of that. So both of these two parties want freedom. Because they want governance to be very minimized, because they don't need the government for pretty much anything, right? They don't need the government to protect them from their feelings getting hurt. Because like a person who's, like I said, intellectually, they're there. If somebody says something to them, or, tries to, they don't need anybody to defend them. They can defend themselves because they got enough knowledge. So they can say, nah, you just, I don't think so. I mean, I can give you a million reasons why you're wrong. They can talk, because they can actually start giving reasons, not literally a million, but I'm saying they can, start reasoning and proving the other person wrong. The person on the other end won't be able to do that, so they will generally run away from an argument, and so that's what it comes down to. The answer is a long answer, but I shortened it over these years. A person who's left-leaning, essentially a low IQ. And that's it. And, and it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate when the democracy, which that's another topic on its own. Democracy, unfortunately, doesn't lead to the best results because of, majority of humanity. It's either too late, like I said, they gain the wisdom quite late in life, and they've voted so long in their life in the wrong way that they've actually sort of, by the time they have some realization, they've already burnt everything below them. That group, or, and then there's the very few who know how to fix the world in a better way, but they are minority. So that's what it is. So, and the rest of the people, they just follow slogans, don't even know the history of the slogan. They don't know where it came from or anything. I'll probably make another video just on those slogans, but thank you very much.